بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد خاتم الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين، وعلى آله الطيبين وأصحابه الأكرمين، ومن تبعهم بإحسان وهدى إلى يوم الدين، وعلينا معهم وفيهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. In today's lesson, we're going to look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam described in the Quran as the straight path, as the one who guides people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the embodiment of all guidance and virtue and servitude to Allah Jalla Jalaluh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-An'am, verse 153, وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ. And this is indeed my straight path, so follow it or follow him. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ. And do not follow other ways and other paths that will then lead you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's path. ذَلِكُمْ وَصَّاكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And this is what He has commanded you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that you become conscious and mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, he represents the straight path. And in the first lesson, Shaykh Yahya was talking about how we say in the Fatiha, every single prayer and every single rak'ah of every prayer, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have blessed. And in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, this is my straight path, so follow him. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his way and his sunnah and all of his teachings represent this path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the path to arriving to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's good pleasure, nearness to him, and being granted his everlasting reward. And Allah also tells us in this verse not to follow other paths. Anything that contradicts the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, anything that deviates from his guidance, even the slightest bit, will be a source of loss and regret on the day of resurrection. And to realize and know that he brought us all good, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, and that we need no other guide and no other imam, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So whoever follows him and follows his path and allows themselves to be guided by him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that person attains eternal felicity and success and the highest degrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's good pleasure. So we have the perfect role model, and everything in the Quran and everything in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he embodies is the straight path and is our path to ultimate success and felicity. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to follow the straight path, and that we have a close connection, and that we are able to resemble the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam inwardly and outwardly, and that we're able to follow his sunnah entirely, and that we are granted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen, walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.